Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Bettendorf Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Monday, September 16th, 2024. It's 5 o'clock p.m. Thank you all for joining us. We have two presentations, and then we'll take a look at our consent agenda items. For our presentations, we welcome Kim Kidwell, the Director of Culture and Recreation, Greg Machetta, the Chairman of the Parks Advisory Board, and Bob Sartor, who also shares responsibilities on that board. Kim, I'm sorry. I looked and saw Michelle's not here, and we were just talking about her.
No
Kim,
problem.
go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate it. Greg Machetta, our Park Advisory Board Chair, and Bob Sartor, our Vice Chair, as you mentioned, are here tonight to give their annual presentation to the council and to you, Mayor. They are tasked annually with checking out all of our parks. Each board member is assigned parks that they visit and kind of assess the amenities at the park, make suggestions for future upgrades, repairs, and in general, just give an overview of our parks in general. So with that, I appreciate all of the hard work that the board does throughout the year, and they're here to give you their annual presentation tonight. So I will turn it over to Greg for that presentation.
Your Honor and council members, good evening. Again, thank you again, Kim, for introducing us. We are a member of the Park Advisory Board, and we do have total members of about 8 members on our team. Again, our duties are discuss, review, and advise on policies concerning facilities, operations, departments, and events, and really to work together with Public Works and the park maintenance. We do meet quarterly, and again, I won't go through the names, but these are the list of all the members. Tonight, we're going to double team you in a sense. Both Bob and myself will be presenting slides, so there'll be a total of 6. We'll kind of rotate back and forth, so you're going to hear both speakers tonight. But again, the park assessment, really what we're here for today, there are over 5 criteria that we looked at when we assessed the parks: condition of facilities, the usage patterns, phased updates, maybe some replacements, possible growth expansion areas, and then our comments are added to the spreadsheet that's attached to the document that you guys have received. All parks, neighborhood parks, community parks, large urban parks, and special use parks are what we looked at. And we typically had 2 members that went to each of the parks, and then we went a final review together, Bob and myself, through most of them to reevaluate what some of the comments were. So that's what we're here to discuss with you today. Some of the highlights first I'll start off with, and then I'll let Bob discuss some of the focus areas. But the highlights were really, really impressed with some of the new playgrounds. I listed a few of them, but you guys know majority of them too. Meyer Park, Devil's Glen, Edgewood, Forest Park, Veterans, Rocket Park, Hollowview. I mean, that's just tremendous for this area, for the Bettendorf facility, the group here, for everyone that to enjoy these amenities. The playgrounds are just awesome, and then how well maintained they are, and really how multi-purpose they are for the city of Bettendorf. We really also valued some of the parkways, the trails, multi-purpose fields that were available. And on top of that, the cleanliness and how properly maintained a lot of these areas were. So we really valued these. There were some of the highlights of our assessment. You can probably see that in the document that we sent in, but those are really some of the highlights that we saw. And like I said, these are so impressive that they're coming into different locations. And throughout the city of Bettendorf, it wasn't just one area that was targeted. Multiple areas were targeted for these playgrounds, and it's, like I said, very impressive and well used by the community. The focus areas, I'll let Bob talk about those that we looked at.
Well, we were talking about upgrading shelters at Devil's Glen, perhaps repurposing some of these old structures there, updating the shelter at Edgewood Park, as Kim was just showing us before the meeting. The volume of kids that go through there during the summer is amazing. I didn't realize that it's second only after Veterans for the number of kids that go through there. The shelter at Leach Park gets a lot of use, and the shelter of Optimist Park, it says an update here. I think one of the things we were talking about, rather than updating the shelter at Optimist Park, was to turn it into a greenway. The band shell, I wanted to mention, I think deserves a little more attention than it's been getting. It has a lot of eyeballs just in passing through. The golf carts twice a year come through, but then there are all the special events that occur there in conjunction with either picnics or other events that are scheduled that use the band shell, provide music. Right now, I can count it, it's at least 3 colors of brown. I always say that the clarinet section is never flat because of the crack in the concrete. They list to starboard about 2 degrees when they play. But it could use a little more attention than it's getting right now. We also saw other things in restriping tennis courts and basketball courts, a few little things, maybe walking trail at Ed Scheck, and the handicapped accessible areas at Meyer Park. There is really only one break in the, few complaints I got on the park board was that Meyer Park, you have to go a long way with a wheelchair to get into the park. And of course, there's always forever vandalism. The next thing that we were talking about and have been for a couple years is reclassifying some of these parks, McNamara, Wessel, and Optimist. When you go to the Google Maps and they have comments on these parks, people just basically, some of them actually arrive only on the basis that it's on a map, and they're rather surprised when they get there, especially with Wessel. It's 60 foot wide, and there used to be things there. There used to be a basketball court, there used to be a few other things, but basically it's a walkthrough that I've never seen. So I think maybe we should just kind of take them down a notch from parks into Greenway. Back to you.
Okay. And then we also looked at potential future expansion opportunities. There's a pump track that a gentleman recommended to our park board and also to the committee. You could bike on it, you can skateboard on it, and these are future opportunities that could potentially go in some of the parks that we have today. So like I gave you a snapshot of what this picture here that you see pump track was from California where they were using one today. But a unique opportunity to put something like that in one of the parks, there's, in the available land. And other opportunities such as climbing walls. This climbing wall picture that you see here is a picture taken from Iowa City, University of Iowa. They're a climbing wall that they have indoors, but maybe potentially something like that outdoors at a facility, a park potentially. It's extremely popular in the college town. Cricket fields is another one in the middle there, the slide. Cricket fields could be a multi-purpose field. You could not only use it for cricket fields, you could use it for soccer fields, you could use it for other types of fields. But putting a cricket field in may just be the great opportunity right now to do something like that. I know that if you want to look at another opportunity, possibly compare it to a cricket field is out in Houston. My parents live out there, and there's a cricket field out there today that is jam-packed with people, particularly in the summer and in the fall and spring in that area. But that is becoming more and more of a popular trend that maybe you can blend it in with some other type of multi-purpose field, but somehow get a cricket field into this area. And then slacklining and travel rings. These are just unique sports that you could put in a smaller area potentially, and popular in some areas, parks that you might, like I said, these are opportunities. There may be others, but these are some of the top 5 that we looked at that could potentially be put in parks today. So just consider these in the future. I mean, like I said, we should kind of discuss the focus areas, but these would be more of the expansion areas that you could possibly look at for some of the parks moving forward as Bettendorf continues to grow in different parks. And then our final slide is just the benefit of the parks to this community. I mean, the importance of the parks in the community, the well-being for people, the recreation that are available for the folks and people today, the communities, how satisfied they are with the parks. The community satisfaction, Bettendorf is known for great parks, and I think they'll always continue to be. And we are so excited to see the opening of the new water park and the ice skating rink. They're just going to add more value to what we have today in parks that are available for the Bettendorf. I also wanted to talk about the upkeep and maintenance. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but when we looked at the parks, that was 2 to 3 weeks after the storm hit. And there were damages to trees, et cetera, that were as a result of the storm shelters and storms that came through. By the time we got to the parks, all those were cleaned up. This is why I say the condition was absolutely excellent. The responsiveness to when you face a storm like that was very impressive by the parks group and the park maintenance team. We recognized the amount of effort that went into to upkeeping these parks. And in situations like that, they probably had extra overtime or et cetera, extra amount of time they had to put in to maintain those parks, but they were immediately turned around and right back to the level that Bettendorf expects them to be. So the upkeep and maintenance, like I said, the response to that group was tremendous. And then just finally, we'd like to continue to working together with the Public Works and the Parks Maintenance Group, continue to work together to see the community grow and meet their needs and for future growth. And as we discussed here, if you need any additional documentation, we've attached it. And our assessment is also attached in the documents. But again, this is our report. Any final comments you'd like to make, Bob? You good? Okay. All right. Like I said, we appreciate you listening to us today, and Your Honor and council members, thank you again.
Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate your hard work. Do we have any questions for Greg or Bob? We'll start with what both Gregs do. So Greg A, then Greg J.
Greg A, then Greg J. Alphabetical order.
Always.
I've been around looking also, not to the extent you have, but just as an example, I liked the that picture with the skate park or skate area. When I was on the park board in the 90s, we did a skating area out there. So that thing is 30 years old. I went out there and looked at it. It's in bad shape. And I guess that's just a good example of there are some things that I think no matter how good our parks are, park maintenance people are, they can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So I would like to see when we do this planning this year that there'll be a little more attention paid to the parks, and some of these older facilities need to be, like the band shell and others need to be looked at for some funding. Thank you, Your Honor.
Brian, we're working on the capital improvement budget as we move forward. I know we're kind of wrapping parks in there. You have a comment or two maybe to tell us along the lines of Greg's question?
I do. First of all, I thank Greg and Bob's coming in. We both, Kim and I and Jason Manfold met with them last week, and because we also received their comments as well. And one of the things too, I wanted to let you know that I've been working on with our engineering staff, and this parallels exactly with what we were assessing in the park. So what we've done is we've created we went through all of the parks and identified all the structures and the shelters and restrooms and everything like that. And then what we went through is a prioritization matrix, 1 through 5. Pat Lynch went through all the parks and then and assessed them based off a certain value. So what we found was in this summary was that there is a need in the structures that we currently have in restrooms, and then also in just the shelters themselves that Kim has groups that are recreating there or programming there during the summer months. So that's how we're going to prioritize them. She just literally gave us this afternoon a copy of all the different programs at the different shelters. So we've identified shelters in Middle Park, and as Bob alluded to, there needs to be attention also to the band shell over there at Veterans. So everything that they've talked about and everything that we came up with in our matrix definitely targets us to lean towards taking some of that monies that's in our CIPs and redoing some of these shelters, either painting or roofing them and things like that. So this is something that I'm going to be talking to you guys about as we move into goal setting here in a few weeks. But this fall, though, we do have monies in our current CIP that we're going to be addressing several of these shelters' roofs. And then one of the things too that they noted in their survey that we also noted in our survey, a lot of these structures, the poles and everything, they need to be painted. So we either are gonna look at having staff do it or look at a day of caring where we may get a group of volunteers to assist in sanding and painting some of these structures. So everything that they were talking about today totally parallels exactly what we found in our survey. So we look forward to meeting with them here in the near future and moving forward with a lot of these goals that were identified both in their report and our report.
Thank you, sir. Greg, Jay, and then Lisa.
Thank you, Your Honor. Guys, first of all, I want to say thank you. I was in the audience, it must have been a year ago, year and a half ago, when you guys came through the first time and did this. And I was impressed then with your thoroughness, and I'm equally impressed tonight. So thank you, you're volunteers, and I really appreciate it. Couple of questions. When you're on the council, what I learned is nobody ever sends you a text or an email or a call unless they're complaining. One of the complaints I had received was over striping of the rec trails. Did you guys look at any of that, or Brian, have you looked at striping of the rec trails? And is that a concern that either of you would have?
I would like to comment on that, sir. Just Mr. Manful identified that, and we are going to be looking at contracting to get that restriped, if not this fall, in the spring of next year.
Okay. Generally, or just in the area where my concerned citizen was?
No, basically the whole entire trail, because if you recall over the past about 4 years ago, we sectioned off and redid the, resurfaced the recreational trail all the way from the west side over by Davenport, all the way over to, I believe, is it past Hollowview, Jason?
Yeah, right up to Hollowview.
So what we want to do is want to restripe that whole entire section and then also continue on out to the east.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of other quick points. In the report itself, Hollowview Park, I don't know if that was a typo or not. It's on page 2. But if it's not a typo, you guys will have to tell me where Hollowview Park is, because I'm not sure I understand.
I can tell you where Hollowview Park is. It's right near I live in that neighborhood, so
Yeah,
it's in
yeah.
Bettendorf.
It's by your house, Greg.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's what I always thought, to be honest, Your Honor. But the report says it's next to Grant Wood Elementary, and I'm,
Oh, then maybe that is a typo, but
Okay.
I'll correct it. No
okay,
problem.
that's great. And then lastly,
Just trying to help.
yeah, thank you, I
We'll move
appreciate
to
that.
school.
And then lastly, just, are there, pick the top 2 or the top 3 things you'd like to see us consider and work on? Brian's gonna give it to us, but what are the things that you guys are saying are the important things?
Do it?
I would, of course, I have a locational bias. I think the band shell really does need a little bit of upgrading, if not just paint, because of the, like I say, the number of eyeballs that see it is tremendous, and I think it could improve.
Yeah. And the shelters, I think those two, the band shell and the shelters, I think if you make those improvements with so many people using the shelters, those two, I think are at the top.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Lisa?
Hopefully, I was gonna touch, hopefully this is all right, Kim, since we're in the midst of this, but we met on the master plan for parks last Wednesday, and in that is Frank and I, Brian, Kim, Jeff, and Jason back there. But we did a lot of talking about kind of the same thing, and we did a lot of talking about the existing parks, Forest Grove, and just brainstorming. And some of this stuff was in Forest Grove and some of the other parks, like the pump track, exactly what you guys hit. Cricket, and I know Greg went to look at a cricket game this weekend, the rings, adventure parks. We talked with, I don't remember his name, fellow with conservation area and sensory gardens, that type of thing, the bikes, we didn't talk about slack lining, what's it called? But just a heads up, when we get to goal setting, we're gonna be, I'm speaking for Frank again, we're gonna be hitting 3 areas as far as wanting to talk to you guys about maintenance on our existing, what improvements on the existing, and then Forest Grove as far as funding, and then looking at that master plan. And I don't know if I missed anything from that group, but, so just a heads up on kind of the stuff we talked about. Did I miss anything, Bob? On Wednesdays? Frank?
I agree with you.
Okay. Just a heads up on kind of what we talked about and kind of how it ties in with what these guys hit.
Any other questions for Greg? Okay, we all have them. Let's go. You got my attention first, Frank, and then we'll go Jerry, and then we'll go on the phone to see if Scott or Nick has one.
I would just like to make a suggestion, and Brian, tell me if I'm off base on this, but I think the skate park is in rough enough condition now that it probably wouldn't be out of consideration to build one, a new one, bigger, and possibly out at Forest Grove Park. Has that, any thought been given to that?
We haven't. When we sat there, I live right across the street from there, so I actually, when I go to walk my dogs, I took a look at it, and, you know, over the past several years, it has slowly deteriorated, but it's amazing to me how many kids use it in that location. I don't know. That's one of the things, too, that we would have to look at to see if moving it, if you're still gonna get the kids that, because there's a lot of kids in that neighborhood that feed through there, down my street and over to that park. And I don't know if it's best to sit there, and we'll have to talk about it strategically, rather than just throw it up there at Forest Grove. Maybe that location is still the best one. It all depends on the demographics of actually who is using that park. And from what I'm seeing, Frank, is that it's a lot of kids in the neighborhood that are using it.
Can we make that one up there bigger then?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't have any room or any parking. Jerry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Couple questions. One is, we still put $200,000 in the budget every year for these small items, don't we, for parks?
We do. We actually have $250,000 sitting in this year's budget, and then in the out years, I believe next fiscal year, we start raising it up to 500. So yes, with the $250,000 that we have in there this year, we did not target any specific playground to be replaced, because we were kind of gearing towards conversations with the park board, park advisory board, and internal discussions that we needed to target some of these structures, and that's why we're going through and identifying them and prioritizing them now, and then gonna start getting estimates and get that work done, if not this fall, in the spring of next year, still within this current fiscal year.
Okay, good, thanks. And then regarding the cricket field, wouldn't the Great Lawn be a good place to put that? We spent a ton of money grading that, and it would seem to me that would be a perfect place to put the cricket field and use the Great Lawn, since we spent a lot of money grading it.
All right, back to Greg.
Just, thank you, Jerry, for bringing that up. Our initial goal is to find a location. And I kind of compare it to deck hockey. We started off with one. We didn't know if it was going to be popular or not. It was probably could have 3 decks and use that. The ice skating rink, Decker was able to get a hold of a used one to see if it was popular. Very popular. Now we're going to have a permanent. Other pickleball, whoever even heard of that? Now it's the big rave. And I think that the cricket enthusiasts, and there's a lot of people in the community, in the Quad Cities that, in fact, I was at a cricket match Saturday with the Quad City Championship cricket match, and it was 8 teams that were competing. So it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, Chicago, Des Moines, and St. Louis are the kind of the main hubs now where they have all these big tournaments and stuff. So we're really positioned well. But again, let's start with the location, see how it goes, and if it's as popular as I think it's going to be, then we could add on other things in the future. But I think we need to test it first and see if it's going to be as popular as I think it is. But thank you for bringing that up.
All right, well, Bob, Greg, thank you both very much for your work and for the work of the committee, and we appreciate the presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we'll move to, well, Jeff's gonna come to the front of the room. Oh, shoot, yeah, Scott or Nick, either one of you have anything? You can just unmute and get started.
No, thank you, Your Honor. I had one quick question. As an avid user of the parks, how do we determine the usage, right? I think we have sort of stack ranked them in terms of how many people attend or pass through a park in a given year. How do we determine that?
Hi, Nick. So we can determine it somewhat in the programs that we have in the parks that we do provide programming, but also through the shelter rentals. So we have data on how many people rent the shelters and then for how many people, if they're having an event, if they're having a party, we do gather all that information. So we have a pretty good ballpark as to how many people actually rent and use the shelters. And then as far as our programming goes, where we have our playground programs, our day camp programs, our tot lot, sports and games, Edgewood Park gets about 3,000 kids a year just from our programs. So they're using that shelter and those restrooms there. So that's kind of how we gather that data for who's using what parks. As far as the neighborhood goes,
Fantastic, thank you.
we could use the census data. I know Taylor has provided some data on the surrounding neighborhoods that surround the parks as far as, age range of families who live there. So we could also gather that too.
Very helpful. Thanks, Kim.
All right,
Nothing further, Your Honor.
thank you. Now, Greg and Bob, thank you very much, and we appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks, guys, appreciate you. We'll move to our update on the community survey results from Zen City. For that, we welcome our Assistant City Administrator, Mr. Jeff Ryder. Jeff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to pinch hit for Angie this evening. Angie fell ill this afternoon about 2 o'clock, so.
Has she been around Nauman?
That's what I was thinking.
I don't believe so, but I'll leave that up to Nauman and Angie. I'm not sure. But I'll do my best here to pinch hit, but you will find me probably referencing her slides pretty heavily as I go through this. At your places are copies of the Zen City Community Survey and the report from May to July, and it's very much more in depth than the presentation this evening. I just wanted to give you a snapshot in this presentation of what you'll find in the packet. And then just kind of also touch on some pretty strong points, some high points as to what Zen City can provide for us as well, and what they're doing for us in the work every single day. So really quickly, I want to touch on an overview of what Zen City can offer us, and they do offer us, how we survey the community, and then look at some of those community survey results, and then have a little bit of a discussion if you have any questions. So the who, what, when, where, why, and how of Zen City. Again, who is Zen City? It's an all-in-one community engagement platform. What it provides insights, reports, surveys, engagement, web pages, and more. And one thing I want to emphasize as well is Zen City itself uses public-facing commentary and dialogue. It doesn't get into the private nature or personal Facebook pages, things like that. It gathers and aggregates data that's public-facing, and it's out there for the entire community to see. So it's not an invasive platform in that it does not troll personal accounts. Where? Obviously anywhere. If someone in Atlanta, Georgia said something about the city of Bettendorf, it'll pick that up. When? All the time. Why? This is one that I really appreciate, and I think we see it more so in this digital survey versus our old survey through the National Citizen Survey, which was a paper document. It gives a voice to the silent majority with respect to the vocal minority. And how? Well, it was going to be her, but allow me. I'll do my best to represent Angie's presentation here. So how we survey. Zen City's community survey, we do this 2 surveys every year since 2022. So in a total, we've had 4 surveys so far. We average 457 respondents per survey, so that's 914 on average over the first 2 years that we have had. It's a recurring survey, or a live survey, if you will, so This information is collecting on an ongoing basis. The survey never starts and stops, which we really appreciate because it continues to then churn and update information as those survey results continue to come in, with not really having a finite end date. And it's all part of our contract, which is a really good feature as well. You may recall a couple years back, we talked to you about the National Citizen Survey and jettisoning that for the sake of the Zen City model, which we thought was a lot more contemporary and provided a lot more content at a very affordable price. It replaced the National Citizen Survey in that report. That was one survey every 2 years. So in this regard, as you can see, we're doubling the output, and we're actually doing it annually as well. In 2022, the last time we had the NCS report, we had 608 respondents. So with the Zen City survey, we're actually getting a better response over the digital platform to our survey as well, which offers a little bit of intel as to maybe the why of some of our survey results that you'll see here, and I'll get into that in just a moment as well. And then it was a one and done survey, similar to what I just mentioned. It's kind of more of that finite nature. You get it, you set it, you forget it, it's done, and then we can determine whether or not we wish to use the data as we move forward with our decision making. And obviously it came at an additional cost of $19,000 every other year that we have now been able to reappropriate or reuse for other purposes, since the Zen City contract offers it at no cost. So just real quickly, I'll go into a little bit of what you see in your packet and talk about some of these survey results, and I'll highlight a couple of things as well. So these are just some slides on how they aggregate and collect all their data, the overall satisfaction scores, et cetera. The one thing I would like to note on here, the interesting thing about the satisfaction scores, there's a number of things that are contributing to our satisfaction right now, or lack thereof, if you will. As you can see here, 86% of the 483 surveyed residents are satisfied with life in Bettendorf. That's a slight downtick from what we would have gotten in the National Citizen Survey. With the National Citizen Survey, however, though, we found that the paper survey, you tend to get a more positive response from a smaller group of individuals. This one represents a larger faction of our community, so you're going to get a larger representation of opinions. The other thing as well, and I'll highlight on this in a second too, is we are in a very contentious political season right now. There's a lot of question, and what Zen City is seeing amongst overall of their 500 plus cities and counties that they work with is every city's numbers are down slightly. And it's attributed a lot to the political climate we are in right now. And they would anticipate that numbers may either go back up or at least stabilize once the elections are over and we get back more into a non-election cycle. So it's something that they're seeing across every one of our municipalities and counties that they have in their portfolio. But amongst our cohort that you'll see here in just a moment, we rate very, very high. So these are some of the main measures of satisfaction in our community. The bars on the right show the proportion of responses that are positive, neutral, and negative. And what you can see here is we're slightly down by percentage overall, but again, comped to our cohort and then the national averages, we are exponentially higher than what everyone else is seeing. This is a unique tool that Zen City offers as well. And if you ever want to go into your personal account on Zen City and see what's going on, you can see how folks in your specific wards responded to the questions. And this is something that the NCS couldn't provide. Again, it was a paper survey. This is broken down by ward, and you can see satisfaction in your ward and how people answered the questions specific to different areas and what they're thinking, which is a very unique tool, I think. Ward 4 is very happy.
Jeff, does that break down why, like construction, or does it get into kind of the whys?
So in your packet, you can kind of deduce a little bit further as to what people are thinking and maybe attribute it to things like, that's a good point, Councilmember Brown. Maybe folks are a little bit more dissatisfied in the 5th ward because there's so much construction. You can kind of see some of those results flesh out in the survey.
Okay.
I would tell you, as I looked through them myself, in my opinion, I would say that there is a little bit of bias towards what's going on in that ward and how people responded. I wouldn't say it's enough to affect the overall survey responses, because generally, all in all, folks are responding in a pretty high clip. And they're pretty consistent. But yeah, you could probably attribute some of those things to what's happening in their specific ward. So they obviously do everything that you would expect. They look at age, they look at demographical information, income, race, gender, ethnicity, and they break all that out as well. And that's all reflected in here also. Life in Bettendorf, overall satisfaction ratings, you can take a look at all these things. I'm just going through these really quick because I'll get back into the meat of the presentation here in just a second. Here's one slide that we can talk about as we go into goal setting a little bit further, and I'm going to touch on this in a moment too. But one thing that they suggest we continue to maintain, and this is something that we have shown that we can, in our opinion, affect, and that is maintain the sense of overall safety. So 81% show that they're satisfied, 13% suggest that they're not as satisfied, but 81% is something that we can continue to work forward on and actually try to increase those numbers. We believe that, as you can see, we're up 2% on the overall satisfaction. That's the type of thing through Chief Kimball's efforts and other efforts that we put forward. Communication is something that we can help affect this with. What you're going to see on this other one, on the focusing on the low scoring characteristics, they suggest focusing on the area where there's the availability of affordable housing. That's a question that a lot of folks answered and said we need to work on that. Zen City is suggesting maybe we look into that further. The one thing I would suggest, or I would caution us on, or maybe we do more work on in this area, is fundamentally knowing what we wish to do with the outcome of affordable housing. We can survey folks all day long, and there's a tool that Zen City offers for surveying a little bit more specifically on this area. But the survey results, the communication, if you will, is not going to fundamentally fix the issue of affordable housing. Communication can certainly help and impact what we do with speed enforcement and safety, for example. If we communicate more, we may be able to help make our city more safe. Fundamentally, affordable housing is a very big systemic issue, if you will, that's not just in Bettendorf. So if we choose to move forward and say we want to address affordable housing, we should probably talk in goal setting a little bit more about what the fundamental issue is that we'd like to talk about. Yes, sir.
What's always confused me about that is whose definition, what is
Yes.
affordable housing? To me, at my age and blah, 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 affordable housing may be this much a month, and for somebody just starting off, it might be less than that, so.
That's a very good question, and that's kind of where I was leading
Okay.
with my
I'll
thought
be
or
quiet.
suggestion about fundamentally answering the question. What Zen City can offer, and you'll see here in just a moment, is a tool where we can dive deeper into what the definition of affordable housing is for folks that responded to this survey. Affordable means a lot of different things, and it also has a true definition as you look at different types of housing types and the different sorts of programs that are in place at either the state or federal level for affordable housing. There's specific definitions, but that's different from affordability. So we would really want to dive deeper into making sure we understand what it is people are saying about affordable housing before we say we want to go fix this fundamental issue. So I agree with you 100%, Councilmember Adamson. So community benchmarking is very important. The National Citizen Survey did this for us. Zen City's doing it for us as well. This is just a sample of the cohort that we are in. There's a number of other cities in our cohort as well, but as you can see, they're not comparing Bettendorf simply to our neighbors. They're looking nationally, and they have some great demographic and cross-referencing information that really shows how they comp with us when it comes to benchmarking. Overall, as you can see by the blue dot, that's Bettendorf. Overall, we are rating extremely high versus both our cohort and the national averages. Talked about all of this. Again, the only benchmark where we performed lower than the national average is that availability of affordable housing. Everything else, we're either slightly above or we're substantially outperforming both our cohort and the national averages. So that's something to be very proud of. As we look at these numbers as well, you may ask also, on the satisfaction side, why only 80-85%? Well, satisfaction in many cities, satisfaction for them is 62-63%. So the fact that we're in the low, mid, and even high 80s in some numbers, Zen City will tell us we are outperforming every single one of the national averages that they have, or all of the national communities that they work with. So this is what Zen City calls a pulse survey. As you can see on the bottom, additional fee-based service. This is an a la carte service that they could offer us if we wish to pursue something like that affordable housing question a little bit further. They could put out a 5 to 8 week survey, customize that survey with questions, some could be open-ended, and get a more analytical sample and analytical reporting on what people are saying, giving us a dashboard and also a final report on that subject matter of affordable housing specifically. If we chose to dive deeper into that, they could certainly help us with that. So the power of words, this is one that Angie's very proud of and excited about, so I don't want to shortchange it at all. But this is what folks commonly said about what would be one thing they would want to change and what would be one thing that is more so their favorite thing about living in Bettendorf. And you can certainly see there's a little bit of overlap, but it's very reflective of the survey results as well. The things that folks would like to change, you know, some of those you'd obviously want to see. Some of the things they really like are some of those things you'd certainly expect. But it certainly does show why people like us and why people think we need to improve and what they might want to change. So we're very happy with both sides of this in a lot of regards because it proves and validates a lot of the work that we do. So before closing with questions, again, I would just state again that the survey results are here in your packets. The survey results are more in depth on your dashboard and your account on Zen City if you wish to look at it. And the one thing I just want to close with, because I think it is super awesome, is one of the slides in here in your packet. The overall satisfaction in Bettendorf is 18% higher than that of our cohort. Bettendorf resides at 86%. Our cohort satisfaction rate is 68%, and the national average is 72%. So the fact that we're rating in the upper 80s, I think it does say a lot about the work we are doing. And I think it's a very true and fair number, and I don't think it's skewed in any way. And even in a political climate like this, I think we should all be very proud of the work that's being done by the city of Bettendorf. And I kept that brief. We can certainly talk about this more in goal setting. There's some things that stand out, and we certainly will be prepared to answer your questions.
Questions for Jeff from this side? Jerry?
Thank you, Your Honor. I seem to recall several weeks or months ago, there was some kind of a survey on affordable housing. And affordable applies to your income level. And I seem to remember that Bettendorf's lack of affordable housing was in the $450,000 house range. That we just didn't have enough houses in that range.
So I believe the survey you were referencing, I don't think anything that you've said is inaccurate, Councilmember Sexer. I think the survey you're referencing was actually presented by Rule to the chamber, and which we were part of. And I think to Councilmember Adamson's point, that is very true in that range in Bettendorf, $450,000 housing stock is light. This, to Councilmember Adamson's point, and I think Councilmember Brown would attest to this as well, we need to better understand what the definition by the survey results for Bettendorf mean when people say, what is affordable housing? Is it the definition? Do people misconceive, and Mark's very passionate about this, do people misconceive Section 8 housing as affordable or low income? Is senior housing in a subsidized state for seniors affordable housing that people are looking at? We need to understand truthfully, are people trying to get a $400,000 home for $100,000? What does affordable mean? So if we'd want to go to that level, we certainly could. But I think affordable housing in general, they're probably referencing more the same crisis in term that people are seeing across the country as affordable housing being not enough for people to move in and get started or finish their life, would be my guess. But I think you are exactly right.
Then you have to answer the next question. What are you going to do about it from a
That's correct.
city standpoint?
That's correct.
With everybody's tax dollar, is that the right move?
Most definitely, Your Honor.
Frank, you anything? No? Questions? No? Scott or Nick, chime in if you got a question.
Mayor? Let them go.
Nothing from me, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greg Jager.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just following up on the affordability, don't forget our comp plan was just adopted, where it said we had a shortage of houses in the $3,000 a month rental range. So we do have some information in our comp plan on affordability. 2 quick points or questions. On this live survey, this is like 400 households or 500 responses over the last quarter. How does Decker become one of the people selected, or how does he fill out a survey form?
So this is handled specifically on social platforms of the public facing, and people are asked to take it. So they're invited, if you will, by Zen City, and that is done on purpose so they do not get skewed data from the public. We could take our lists and send it specifically to people to gauge. They extremely highly recommend that we put this out there on all social channels and let people respond to us versus us going and soliciting
There's
them.
just something posted on Facebook that says, hey, would you take a
That's correct.
5-minute survey?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. And then, I'd asked this question before, I was just curious if we had any kind of a follow-up. My understanding of what Zen City monitors is the official channels, the City of Bettendorf stuff, the mayor's message, and unofficial channels, which is mostly media. What comes out of Quad City Times, what comes out of channels 6, 8, that kind of thing. If I post something on Nextdoor that says, oh, sorry, Central Lane is not gonna go this year, we're gonna have to delay it a year. If I post that on Nextdoor and I get 50 responses saying, geez, that's terrible, what's going on in the city? Zen City won't pick that up because that's coming to a private account, such as it is, and the responses are private. So if that's still the case, you're nodding, so I'm assuming it's still the case, it makes it a little harder for me to 100% accept the Zen City stuff because it's picking up what we say and it's picking up what the media says. We're not getting the chatter person to person that would be helpful in trying to get a full picture of what the community itself is saying, not only in response to us, but to each other. So again, I raise it. If it's something they can look at, I'd sure appreciate it.
Everything you said is accurate. The one thing I would add is if folks chatter person to public, they pick that up. They definitely do not pick up person to person, or if it's a next door and it's a neighborhood group, they don't pick that up unless they are, or the city is invited to be a part of that group.
Yeah, if I go on Nextdoor and just start scanning stuff, I'll see things from people on city topics. But Nextdoor, for whatever reason, Zen City isn't picking it up the same way I do.
No, because it's private.
Yeah.
So if it's, yes, sir.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but if WQAD broadcasts something, a story,
Yeah.
and people comment on that
Picks it up.
story, they pick it up, then flaw, but
It's
it's,
not a flaw, it's just a design issue. And we can't automatically assume. One of the things, when I came on, I was new. And one of the things I really relied on was Zen City during budget talks, because there's no chatter at all about the fact we were raising the tax levy, not necessarily taxes, but the tax levy. There was no no comments on official channels. But I think there may have been more comments in the community, more community chatter on it than we picked up. And I worry about that part of it. It's just me, and there certainly wasn't a great hue and cry during the public hearing process. But it is something that I think about when I try to figure out how best to represent the residents.
and that may be,
This is just a tool that's helpful, right?
Yeah,
We didn't
yeah.
have it before, and
that may be the idea of that pulse survey.
Yeah, so I would
So you can-
suggest, exactly, Deck, as we're looking at this, two things, I would suggest the pulse survey, if this is something we'd want to embark on, we could focus more highly on a topic of interest to the city council and the staff and survey specific groups. We can specifically target groups in this with a pulse survey. This is not something that would be done organically where we just say, hey, would you like to take a survey? This can be more targeted and direct, and we certainly can do that. And you're gonna get a lot of information on a specific topic, pretty hard and heavy. And then I would just say as well, I do appreciate everything you say, Councilmember Jager. I believe the tools that Zen City provides us are certainly more robust than what we were getting from the National Citizen Survey. So in retrospect, what we had versus what we are doing, I think we have a significant improvement at a significant value.
I'm not finding fault with it at all. In my own mind, I just want to make sure I don't overly rely on this as determinative. It's a tool, it's a factor.
And that's I very much appreciate that, and that's very commensurate with what you see on affordable housing. I mean, I would certainly not want to rely on the city solving the problem of affordable housing if that's not the city's role per se, just because a survey told us this is something we should focus on. So I agree with you on that for sure.
Other questions for Jeff? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate the update.
Tell Angie she did a good job. And
Yeah.
Did a great job.
Yes,
She would have had a lot more smiles on her face and a lot more, yeah,
we might have had a stronger preference.
I don't disagree at all.
Did a heck of a job.
All right, let's move on to our consent agenda item for discussion. That's consent agenda K. This is a resolution approving a joint agreement with our friends in the area for presentation of this consent agenda item. We welcome our Public Works Director, Brian Schmidt, and our Transit Manager, Austin Whelan. Austin's up here.
A desire for the city of Eldridge and the city of LeClaire to consider the fact of adding a public transit in some capacity to connect, especially LeClaire. We're seeing a lot of people wanting to get out there to the Plex area, obviously with all the development going on up there, the potential of a new hospital possibly up there. This fits right in line with what all the cities have agreed to do with applying for an ICAP grant. And then one of the things too I wanted to note, kind of goes hand in hand with this, is that when I was looking at the Zen City data, it says ease of getting around by public transportation. Specifically in there, it was 38% in favor, 35% that disliked our current service. So the purpose of this study is to basically provide better ridership, run a more efficient service. So I'll turn it over to Austin, who can provide more details on all the work that he's been doing with Bi-State and the member cities.
Awesome, thanks, Austin.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Your Honor, Council. You'll be happy to know that Brian just covered the first paragraph of what I had written down here, so it should go a lot shorter. Good segue too with the Zen City data. I was happy to see that we're above national average and cohort average on that, but I always like to do better, so why not try to do better? So as Brian mentioned, this project originated through multiple conversations coordinated through Bi-State regarding some of these evolving transit needs throughout the Scott County area. Davenport's got a growing north half of their city with the Amazon facility going in, evolving transit needs there. We have the Plex. A lot of those developments have a high likelihood to create additional transit demand, especially with that larger medical facility that was just announced recently. So I think it's important for us to have a solid plan on how to best service that area once those developments are complete. And additionally, there's been some desire among staff and council to explore what the future of transit looks like for our community to determine what model makes the most sense moving forward, so we can continue to provide efficient, reliable, and cost-effective service throughout the community. So it was determined through those discussions that the best way to accomplish some of these shared objectives is to start with a passenger transportation study of the Scott County area, and to take advantage of economies of scale by doing it jointly with the other three cities who are interested in similar concepts and information. The vision of the study is to have a final product that redesigns and optimizes transit services across the region. So that could take the form of different routing structures or even different models of service, with the large emphasis on having better connectivity between the cities, providing better access to these expanding areas, and reducing any inefficiencies that are in our current route structures. The goal is to look at how we make this happen with our existing resources that are in place today. So studies like this tend to be a trend in the transit space right now. The Des Moines-based transit agency, DART, is actually going through a very similar process currently with their Reimagine DART campaign. So as that project wraps up towards the end of this year, I think it'll be a great example for us to follow, kind of see what they did. So they're doing a whole network redesign and looking at different modes of service to kind of complement what they have existing already. So the agreement on the consent agenda for tomorrow is just agreeing to the joint application for the Iowa Clean Air Attainment Program grant, also known as ICAP, that we intend to use to fund the study. Davenport City Bus will be the lead applicant for the grant, so just one city will apply for it, but it'll be a joint study. Bi-State is assisting in the grant development process. The agreement also commits the necessary local matching funds of $12,853 for the grant. The estimated budget for the project is about $250,000, with 80% of that funded by the ICAP grant. So the remaining $50,000 is split by the 4 named cities based on population percentage from the most recent 2020 census data. If awarded, funding would become available starting July 1 of 2025, so fiscal year 2026. Therefore, the local matching dollars would be included in our fiscal year 2026 budget requests. But due to the use of our remaining 100% ARPA funding for fiscal year 2025 and 26 operations, there's no concern on our end that these matching dollars would require an increase to any projected budget needs. As this is a public transit project, the public involvement process will be a key component from start to finish. Therefore, I'd expect to have additional updates for council as this project progresses, including additional approval items to be taken up at future council meetings. We expect the entire process to take about 1.5 years from the time we are notified of an award, if we are lucky enough to be notified of an award. So we expect the notification to happen sometime late winter, early spring of '25. So we'll then, if we are awarded, we'll begin to be able to start the process of putting the scope of work together for the study and all that stuff prior to having to expend any funds starting in July. So at this time, we're just asking to keep this matter on consent agenda for tomorrow, approve the agreement, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Austin? Yes, Greg, A.
Thank you, Your Honor. Not to sound like a broken record, but I understand because of several cities, 2 states, river, it's more difficult. But I'll say it again, the driving around on a route is not efficient at all. And so do you think the main gist of this is to supplement the current system with other ideas, or are they looking at some complete different model?
So I think the biggest goal of this is to optimize what we currently have. So kind of to address that issue of, driving around on the routes. Are there areas of those fixed routes that we currently serve that there's no utilization on? And can we optimize the route to make the most sense for the people that are using it? So, one of the biggest examples I can give is our morning route coming over from Moline Center Station in the morning is pretty much jam-packed full, and I've been told that is almost to the point of standing room only for that first round, and that's mainly riders that are getting on at Center Station and riding out to the industrial park. So that's about a 45-minute ride for them because they're at the start of the route at Center Station and close to the end of the route at the industrial park. So is there a way to optimize that to make that trip shorter because we have a large use of that? And then once we're able to optimize the routes, do we then free up existing resources to look at some other supplemental model that, does more of an on-demand type service or, a hybrid of both? So,
Because a lot of the people that really need transportation are people that have lower income and they work second and third shift, stocking shift, whatever they're doing.
Yep.
And this route system doesn't serve them.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, I say this every year, and I know you know that,
Yeah.
and I think you believe it, but
Like I was saying, we are seeing an increase in ridership data, but yet, just to your point, Greg, we're seeing a peak in the morning and then in the late morning, early afternoon, the ridership is down, and then a peak towards rush hour. So one of the things too that's this we're hoping to get out of this study, and when we sit down with them and start formulating a scope of services, is how can we better, in between, when you sit there and you mention how there's buses just driving around with nobody in them, maybe it isn't a fixed route model that we look at, but more of an on-demand, very similar to what Riverbend offers, Or you may just have buses strategically placed around the city, and then they get a phone call, and they get dispatched over to a certain location to pick somebody up and then take them to their destination. So that's what we're hoping to get out of this study. Obviously, the big thing is to increase ridership, because the more riders that we have on our buses, the increased federal funding and state funding we do get.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Yep. Any other questions? Scott, anything? All right.
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Bet. Let's entertain a motion to keep this on consent as consent item K.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll take it up tomorrow night. Please take a look at the consent agenda. Are there any other remaining items on that agenda any council member would like to discuss at this time? Greg J.
Thank you, Your Honor. Consent E, the change order for Palmer Hills parking lot resurfacing. There was some discussion among Palmer Hills staff that the culvert at the entranceway to the golf course is collapsing and needs to be replaced. Is that correct, and/or is that a part of this project?
That is correct, and that is not part of this project. That is something that we plan on addressing late fall, early winter. That'll be a separate project that we'll bring forth in front of council.
After the golf course itself closes,
That is
probably?
correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other consent agenda items? Yes, Frank?
Your Honor, item J, Brian, I'll go back to you. You're on a roll today. Is this one of the trucks that we were talking about in a previous meeting where you had planned on purchasing trucks and they're just not available, and so now you're having to replace engines on existing trucks in order to be feasible out there in the field?
That is correct. So currently, that plow truck number 2022 is one of our large tandem axle trucks that we use during the winter months to plow the main routes, Middle Road, 53rd, Devil's Glen, 18th Street. And during the summer months, we use it to haul construction material, rock, stone, dirt, and what have you. That truck was ordered to be replaced in, I believe, June of 2022. We were told that we were going to receive it in October of 2024. Fleet manager called, and now they've moved that date to 2026. So we're anticipating from the date we ordered it, 4 years and 3 months, and that's just a target date. So yes, that engine blew on that truck, and rather than remove and, we definitely need that vehicle, obviously going into winter, but obviously to haul material during the summer months if we're not going to get it for another two and a half years.
Do you foresee additional trucks during that time frame?
That is correct, and that's an item of discussion at goal setting that I look forward to talking to you further about.
Thank you.
Other consent agenda items. Jerry?
Thank you, Your Honor. Item F. I looked at that agreement there with PSA or Impact 7G, and it looked like it was a rather strange agreement where they said, well, we're going to give you some information electronically, but you can't use it on any other project. Once we buy it, isn't it ours?
That's a very standard work product clause for a lot of these engineering professional services agreements. City engineer and I have talked about it. In this case, we really have no other need for it. If it was something that if it was information or if it was a project that we would need to leverage down the road, we would certainly address that in a different way. For this particular contract, for the purpose of this contract, this is adequate and industry standard.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anything else on consent? Scott, do you have anything on consent? Or Nick? Okay. Then I'd like to hear a motion to approve our entire consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you very much. Anybody have questions on the items to appear for tomorrow? Seeing none, any items to be added? Okay, let's entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We stand adjourned. Good work, people. We'll see you tomorrow night. I won't. I will be on.